तो हम लोगों ने देखा है कि योग दर्शन की उत्पत्ति क्यों हुई? Why philosophy originated? क्यों? अगर मैं कहूँ दर्शन की उत्पत्ति क्यों हुई तो उसका उत्तर है कि हम लोगों को दुख से मुक्ति प्राप्त करनी, दुख से मुक्ति प्राप्त करने के लिए to find the liberation from suffering. दर्शन की उत्पत्ति why philosophy originated? Because of the cessation of suffering, to attain the liberation. And we have seen that different philosophy have different opinion for liberation, to attain liberation. Some philosophers say that discriminative knowledge is necessary for the liberation. Means what is discriminative knowledge? विवेक ज्ञान क्या है? That you must know and make a difference between spirit and body, between spirit, individual, immortal spirit, and the body and the senses and the mind. So you have to make a distinction between body and the mind. Sankhya philosophy, which is please welcome our guest professor of he is the professor of Department of Literature from Gothenburg University. Please sit down. Please sit down. So as I told you that discriminative knowledge is important for the liberation, as Sankhya system believe. But your philosophy have different opinion. He says that yoga philosophy, the founder of yoga philosophy is Patanjali. And he said that only discriminative knowledge is not important for liberation, but the practice of yoga is also required for attaining the liberation. So he told us about the practice of yoga philosophy, and he gives eightfold path: yam, niyam, asana, pranayama, pratyahar, dharana, dhyan, samadhi, to attain the liberation. So he emphasizes more on the practical realization to find that liberation. So friend, we have our guest Professor Alexander from Sweden. So I request all of you to welcome him with a great or huge applause. So today we have very honored Professor Alexander for lecture on philosophy and yoga. First of all, I would like to welcome our guest, our Professor Satish Kumar sir, and Head of the Department, Dr. Sanjay Kumar sir, and distinguished professors, Professor Nisendal sir, Professor Minu Dakram, Dr. Deepak Sharma sir. So I would like to welcome all of you, and please once again with a huge applause welcome our guest. In the next class, now I would like to request our guest and sir, please enlighten the land and guide to the master. Now I would request Dr. Deepak Sarwasar for reciting Maharashtra.
Prajanta Varanangupamresya Idivimma Vardhan Kusuvedame Sanahangite Vasunavekne Supayanubhava Sajasvana Svastaye Agune Tovanno Antama Uttadarata Shivo Bhava Barutya Vasuragirvasushrava Achanakshatiumattavaggo Prayandaha Tantavasho Chishtari Divaha Sumanayanunami Mare Sakhibhyaha Sanogo Dishrodhiha Vamurhyano Aghayataha Samasmata Ida es Jatita Hikamya Eta Maivahata Madharanam Bhuyata Soman Kuswaranam Treno Brahmanaspade Takshivantanja Aushijaha Hari Om.
Thank you, sir. Now I would request Professor Satish sir to felicitate our guest with memento and bouquet. Now I request Ms. Lal sir to felicitate Professor Satish sir with garland. Now I request Dr. Amin sir to felicitate our head of the department. Now I request Meenu ma'am to felicitate regarding our guest. Now I request Hamdullah sir to felicitate our guest with garland. Now, I would like to invite Professor Satish sir for formal welcome of our guest.
Thank you, Dr. Sanjeev. First of all, the Department of Philosophy is very delighted and happy to have Professor Åke Sander from Gothenburg University, Sweden, for this special lecture. And we are very delighted to have him because his specialization in Indian philosophy, religion, and especially in yoga. You like to know her credentials of the writings. He has written one of the best papers about yoga, that is the phenomenology and yoga. And you know that the deep concentration of his thought is कि one time he is relating phenomenology of Husserl, that reduction and Apoki. And same time he is relating with the tradition of yogic tradition of India, Samadhi, Sadhana, and Yam Yamasana. It is very difficult task. I have written paper, yeah. It's very difficult, you have written it. And comparison is not always, very easy thing. Because these are two traditions. Even when I was reading a paper, I thought, even earlier before, when Husserl was, he was in India sometimes. I could not get because I have not read about his Indian visit. He have not been in India. But the tradition of the phenomenology, what he have follows, that is technically he have delivered his intellectuality in reduction. Now I will introduce Professor Åke. He have written more than 100 articles in very different news journals, and he have 5 books. And he is visiting India more than 10 times. And even, is very much keen to learn the tradition of India. And one of the toughest meditation of India is Vipassana. And you wonder to know, he have taken 3 10 days courses of that meditation, Buddhist meditation. That is very tough. And he loves India. He thinks that India is his second home. And he loves its culture. He loves the people of India. He loves the religion and culture. Even on the occasion of Mahashivratri. I have seen your photographs. You have taken a holy deep in the Ganges in the morning. Even many of us have not been in the Ganges on the Mahashivratri, but you have taken. So that is the beauty of the man. That is the beauty of the man. He has visited many spiritual places like Bodh Gaya, Varanasi, Sarnath, and Mumbai. he had developed an interest about India, even in the field of philosophy and sociology and psychology. He earlier he was very keen interested, and he had taken his work on Islamic philosophy also, Islamic religion also. Even being a Christian, he had read many more books on the Islam, many more books on the India, and even I will happy to show his book, The Future of Religious Studies in India. So he is a voracious reader, and he speaks very well on the tradition of India, and he loves India like us. So we are very happy to have you, sir. And what wonderful experience with you last night. And many more things I want to say about the yoga philosophy. He will speak today on philosophy and yoga. His topic of the speaker will be philosophy and yoga. So what philosophy is, how philosophy, how you understand philosophy, what philosophers do, and you know what is yoga. Yoga is not only the posture and mudras, this is much more deeper than that. The philosophy of yoga is having deeper sense. When you go to in the concentration level, that is the ultimate reality of that yogic system. And yogic experience is blissful experience. You cannot even express it at all. Even in the little more sadhana, concentration, even in vipassana also, mangal and mudita, benevolence and friendship. When you feel it, you transcend from your basic reality to other reality. Yeah, that is the experience. Transcendental reality. Even the hostel also speaks about the transcendental experience. But he is not kind of spiritual, he is only intellectually doing all these things. But in Indian tradition, if you do all these things, you have to be spiritual, you have to be clear in your ways. Clarity is there. And there is defilement and definition of what you have to do and what you have to not to do. This is a very clear perception about the yoga, in yoga tradition. Even if you have become yogi, you are a practitioner of yoga, certain things you have not to do. Like you cannot tell a lie to anyone, you cannot think about any violence, you cannot have the feeling of any cheating. If you are doing also and you are doing postures and gestures, so you are not a really yogi person. So Professor Gothe, okay, will speak about all these things briefly, and he had much more experience than us because he is senior most professor, and he have visited many more countries and he has much more experience. So I would like to have you, sir, and please come and deliver your lecture.
Thank you for all these much too nice words, I must say. It's a pleasure to be here and trying to talk to you about two topics that are each of them for a long course. And is the mic on if I get closer? Better?
Yeah.
Okay. As both the topic of philosophy and the topic of yoga are huge and to really need a full course for a whole semester at least to get. I was asked to talk about these sort of like a suicide mission really, but when I tried to do it within the time I had, it was, he said, most an hour. so I should try to keep within that. First, I say it was correct from praising here that the main differences between philosophy in the West, if you call it that, and India, is that the philosophy in the West has one goal, and that is knowledge for its own sake, to know about things. Where the Indian philosophies, you can go through all the darshanas, go through the Buddha, all the other ones like Buddhism, whatever, and they all boils down to what you want to have knowledge for. It's not for itself, but for liberation. And that's sort of a big divide between the two traditions. If I should talk about philosophy, I wasn't sure how I was going to do this. But it's really hard to start talking a short while about philosophy. So I just made some notes this morning that I should try to follow. Okay, have you seen the movie Matrix? Any of you?
Yes, ma'am.
You know the movie Matrix, yes. Because there is the main character, he is living sort of a life. And then he finds his really good pill. And when he takes that, he realizes that he is in a virtual reality or a simulated reality. So he comes out of it. I'm going to ask you now, can you be sure that you're not living in a virtual reality or a simulated reality? Think about it a bit. Can you actually be sure about that? And what are the pros and what are the cons for discussing this? Okay. Because when you think about that, if you think hard about that, you started to do philosophy. What?
Descartes' philosophy.
That's Descartes' philosophy. So, philosophy, at least good philosophy, tries to go to the foundations of human life. The foundations of everything. Try to find out if there are or are not any foundations. So philosophers traditionally ask why. What is this? What do we know? What does this mean? Why should I do something? Rather. And the question is, if you ask those questions again and again and again, you ask the questions and you try to get an answer, and you question the answer you get and ask it again and again and again. Then you start coming closer to the foundations of knowledge, foundations of life. You're examining the assumptions that most of our lives are built on. It's a lot of assumptions which we have gotten various ways. So we come back to these a little later. And all of us have a lot of things we take for granted about ourselves, about the world, about the universe, and whatever, which we have not really examined. We start examining those presuppositions, those foundations, then we do philosophy. So, questions that you should ask yourself. I can just make a shorter list here. It's still a long list, but which, if you go through the history of philosophy, found what is the universe? How did it come to be? Why is there something at all and not just nothing? That was Martin Heidegger. I don't know if you heard about him probably. He said this is the one and only real question in philosophy. Why is there anything at all and just nothing? He said he didn't probably answer. That's the basic question based on philosophy. What kind of things exist in the universe? Are they just sort of things that have position in time and space and material things? Or are there other things than things that are in time and space that are maybe real and everywhere over time? And in that case, what are they? And how do they relate to the material things? What is a human being? And how does a human being differ from other beings and things in the world, if they differ at all? What is life? What is consciousness? Does consciousness exist? If you follow the last 2 decades of philosophy debates, you can see that the question of consciousness has been very, very big in philosophy, at least in the West. And one of the reasons for that is the development in IT. When you start developing virtual realities, you start developing smart machines. Can the computer become conscious? Is it only humans that can be conscious? And what are the arguments for or against? If we have a consciousness, what does it consist of? Do we have one each? Do we have one the same, all of us? What is the mind? Is the mind any different from the consciousness? How does the mind and body interact with each other if we have both of them? This is one tough question. And there are a lot of philosophers lately who've been trying to write about this body-mind problem, not just in the West, but also in India. And what is real? What is reality? How can we know? How can we know at all about reality? And those are the questions we have. Problems are the most fundamental problems. These kind of problems are the most fundamental in philosophy. How do you know, and to know that you know anything at all about reality? That's the Kant's problem. You heard about René Descartes? He wanted to get a foundation for knowledge. He wanted to find the one thing he could know that could not be questioned. And so he made a number of steps. So he talked about dreams and he talked about illusions, and he said that imagine there is an all-powerful demon. He didn't want to say God, because God has to be good in this world. Imagine there's an all-powerful demon, and he has full access to your brain, to your mind. So he can give you, make you experience and believe anything he wants. And we know that there isn't such a demon who gives us all the reality, that I am separate from the demon. And he came to the conclusion that the demon can fool me about everything except that I'm thinking. In his famous quote, he believed he found a foundation to build all the other side of that. As it turned out, he was wrong. He proved many times wrong, but that's a different story. But the question still arises, how can we know that the perceptions we have, seeing, hearing, smelling, and so on, of the world is real and not just illusory? How can we know we're not in a dream? And you probably remember these famous Chuang Tzu, the Chinese philosophers in the 3rd century BC. He wrote that he said that he was dreaming he was a butterfly. And the world was very nice. Then he woke up, and he was not a butterfly anymore. And he said, how can I know that I'm not a butterfly dreaming I'm Chuang Tzu? I'm the one Chuang Tzu dreaming was a butterfly. And he never come to the conclusion. There are similar stories in India. Vishnu and Naranda. Vishnu was the Shah, Naranda, the Maya. You probably knew this story. So he made him fall asleep and wake up as a woman. And Naranda in his dream world was a woman, beautiful woman, married a king, got our kids, grandkids and everything. And he was very happy. And then an enemy came and killed all her sons, her 8 sons and her number of grandchildren, and she was very, very sad. And then Vishnu reappeared and woke him up from being this woman, Sushila, and become Naranda again. And said, why were you so sad? He said, oh yeah, I was living this perfectly nice life, and then it was good, but now I realized it was just an illusion. And Vishnu said, only that, right? And then he realized that all the lives he could possibly live were nothing like illusion in the sense of Maya. So that is one kind of argument for a comprehensive or global idealism, I guess, which is, I think, for other reasons hard to achieve. But thinking about these kind of questions and reflecting on them, then you get down to basic philosophy. This is where we start. The problems at a higher level are easier, but these problems are the best ones we have to do. do, the way to learn philosophy, I think we should be sticking on to the philosophy here. The way to learn philosophy is to do philosophy, to start thinking about these kind of questions. The knowledge question, how can I know? And the reality question, is there any reality? And the value question, is life worth living? What kind of life is worth living? What kind of life is right to live? What kind of life is not? But it's tough. To think is hard work, as everybody knows who tried it. So you need guidance, and the guidance, of course, are other earlier impressive philosophers and thinkers and so on, which you can follow and read in a critical manner to see what answers they have come to, and see to what extent those answers can be accepted. My own position here, I'm just going to give you the short from here. I can say that our minds, our consciousness exists and are part of reality. But there are also a great deal other parts of reality outside our mind. I can't prove it if you ask me to do it, but that's my basic beliefs. We have minds, they exist, and they're real. Minds are not illusion, minds are real. But there are also a lot of other real things outside our world. The relationship between the two, in our minds and the body, between the world outside and the world we experience, is, on the other hand, very, very complex. I should come back to it. It's very difficult to know to what extent our perceptions really put ourselves in touch with anything outside. And philosophers and sociologists used to talk about the life world, and I'll come back to that too. And the life world is the world that we are living, the world we experience in it. We have those objects and those things that we think it has. So the life world can be very different from different people. I mean, if you're a stockbroker in Manhattan in New York, the life world is probably very different and consists of a lot of different things than if you're a yogi in a village in India. And why we can say, in a sense, that the things in the minds of a yogi in a village in India, demons, gods, whatever, that they exist, is because the main criterion among sociologists is if it has real effects, then it exists. Like if you believe there's a ghost in the basement, you don't go down in the basement. That makes the ghost real. If you get convinced it's not there anymore and you go down, then the ghost will disappear. But the life world is full of things that you live your life according to. And philosophically speaking, they are real. The things you think are there and you adapt and live your life according to are real. So knowledge, reality, and value are the three things you have to keep your thinking about. So, to summarize, can we know that we're not living in a virtual reality or a simulated reality? That's the big knowledge question. And we can't really proceed very far in our life before we have taken some decision there. Even if we can't know, we have to make a decision, which is true or which is not true. Because unfortunately, we can't live our lives on truth. We have to live our life on what we believe to be true about the world. What we believe to be true after we examine the problem a long time. And to what extent? I mean, most people, most philosophers in history has come to the conclusion that our life world, the world we think we live in, does not really correspond to the real world. Because people from different cultures, different times in history, and so on, different genders, whatever, have experienced the world in a very different way. It's changed over history, it's changed throughout the times, it's changed if you move around in culture. And I guess in India, they said, we travel 4 kilometers and we get a different life world for people who live there. But you have to decide. in a sort of a span of 0 to 100%, how much of how I experience the world is really the world, and how much is just what I've been taught by my parents and my teachers and so on that it should be. And the value question again, can we live a good life in a virtual reality? Even if our views about the world are wrong, can we still live a good life? Like that famous example, you probably heard about it, with a helmet. Somebody invented a helmet you can put on yourself, and then you can decide exactly, connect to the computer, you can decide exactly what experience you will get. Smells, taste, it's perfect. So everything you get, feelings, whatever. And you can write a script about your life. You want to climb Mount Everest, you want to be president of the United States or India, whatever you want to do. You just write a script, and then you have it on, and you're going to experience yourself leading that life. The key is, once you get in there, you can never get out. Would you put the helmet on if it existed? There is some interesting data with that, because some people in New York at the university, they've been asking these questions to philosophers and to sociologists and to psychologists and so on around the United States over the last 20 years. And 20 years ago, there was about 15% who said yes. In the last survey, 2 years ago, about 60% who said yes. They would live their life in the virtual reality if they could, because they believe they could lead a good life there. So, your answer, if you think about that, if you think about that question, your answers to that says a lot about your ethical system and your moral system and about your religious system and so on. So, to contemplate all these questions, you do in philosophy. And to do that, there has been, as I said, one focus in the East and one in the West. And even in the West, there's been two different foci. One has been to get bigger and better theories, bigger and better conceptual apparatuses. To think that, typically physics, you get better and better theories, more and more comprehensive theories, and by more theories you get closer to reality. The other one is the other way around. To think, you have all these biases in the experience of the world. Why don't you try to get away from the biases, to reduce those biases, to reduce the bias? That was Descartes' ambition, to do the reductive way. That was also Husserl's way to do the reductive way. And I think that most traditional Indian philosophies, most of the Darshan, particularly the Vedanta and Sankhya Yoga, have also gone that way, the reductive way, to go, try to reduce, take away the filters between yourself and the world, so that way get to the truth of it. Sorry. It's an old laptop, but it still works. I've had it for many years. Okay. I should really finish my tea already. If you go to the West, I can leave you with the background here now. After Descartes and after Rousseau, everybody has been trying to figure out that problem. How much of our world is considered to be true or not? And one sociologist that's done a lot of work on this is Bourdieu. He coined the term habitus, that you will have a habitus. Another term that I have used for various reasons is pattern of interpretation. And I think that has some advantages, because it's the thing we're talking about is a mental construction, it's a cognitive construction, but it is a pattern. And patterns are things like one thing changes, the other thing changes, they make you picture it, and they determine our realities. One of the people who was basing on these was Immanuel Kant. You heard about Immanuel Kant, I think. He said that you can only know about what he called phenomena, experiences. You can not know about noumena or the things in himself. You can never reach those things. Because our mind has a preset structure, which among other things plays everything in time and space and causal structures. But then there are also other things that are connected to that world history. So the only thing you can access are noumena. So there is a distinction between what our senses perceives and what our mind sees. And that's a pretty big difference. There are a lot of experiments in psychology that shows that if I look at something, like I look at him here, if I put a camera inside my head, what do my brain see, what does my eye see? It's basically a two-dimensional figure in certain colors. But what I'm seeing is a man, a person, multidimensional. How does that happen? You make a distinction between presentations and up-presentations. Presentation is what given to me, my sense organs. Up-presentation is what my mind adds to that. Like, to be able to see a human being, I have to see that it is multidimensional, three-dimensional at least. But it's not only the visual things when I see it. I can see how it feels. I can see that if I touch him, there's a certain resistance to it, but it's a certain hardness. I can also see how it would be to bite him, or to see how it would be to smell of it. And I can see sort of functional things. I can see that he could walk out and come back. I can see that he one time was a baby, and at one time he was going to die. And if I see a woman, I can see at least the possibility of childbearing and so on. How do I get that? I get that through my socialization. I learn through experience that certain objects have certain other capacities. The ice cream is cold, the glass is hard, but it's green. I learn all those things. So I can just get a very, very, very little information, and I get a very rich picture of the world. Most of those things are testable. I mean, I can go around and see if that person has back or not. But they made this famous experiment in Madame Tussauds in London. The museum there, where there are wax dolls behind the roof. And they took one woman, a wax doll of a woman, and put her in the staircase. Oh, sorry, madam, and they walked out. Because she was outside the room, they experienced it to be a real person rather than inside. What does it mean to be a real person? It means that I experience you having your mind, having your consciousness, having ethics, being able to feel anger, to feel joy, to be ecstatic, and so on. Can I ever know that anybody else but me has a mind? So far, nobody has been able to prove that. There's been a lot of people who've been proving. It takes time to test the thing with other mind. Nobody has been proving that. So even if there are a lot of things you can test, you can test when I see the person, because when I see the person, I can also basically see an experience, my mind experience, how they are inside and how they function. You can test if my experience is correct by doing various things. And like different people have different rich concepts when I see something. If I see a camel or something, I have a very poor concept. But if I'm a tourist from North Africa, who live in camels from the 1 year old to the age, they have a very extremely rich concept of camel, which they can acquire. So their world is much, much richer in terms of camels than my world is. My world is much thinner. All our worlds are based on different ideas, different filters we have. And so we have the now, which is a very little information, and now what's called retentions and memories. We add things to them all the time, but we also add expectations to things. What will happen in things in the future, so we can test if you're right. A lot of times we're not right. So, to be an academic is to a lot of times to get a very rich pattern interpretation, a very rich concept in a very limited area, but not knowing very much about other things. And here includes skills and stuff too. So the key point is that all experiences we have, and this is basic and important, and this is basically an agreement. This is basically an agreement with all philosophers, psychologists, East and West. All objects of experience are interpreted from a rather limited information source. So we get, and then we build them up, and we build them up differently depending on who we are, what our histories are, and so on. And all humans are carriers of these kind of patterns, interpretation, or habitus. And that means that we cannot avoid theorizing, because in a sense, when you theorize, it means try to check your facts. You cannot avoid theorizing if you're a philosopher. You have to do that all the time. And we have to try to do it openly and critically, which is very hard. Because all of us have pet beliefs, pet ideas, which we're not very willing to give up. So when we come close to those, it starts to hurt when you think about it. But you can't leave them alone if you want to be a philosopher. So how an individual constitutes his or her life work depends on the subjective side of the world, depends on what we have in our pattern interpretation and our pattern. So for most philosophers and psychologists, they don't believe in, at least in the West, in pure facts, in pure perceptions, pure experiences. They only believe in contaminated experiences. Except, again, Rousseau and Patanjali. They try to get away from all those contaminations of experience to a pure concept. But you should remember that the life world we live in, it is real. In the Durkheimian sense of social fact. That a lot of the things, if we don't take it for granted, it's going to hurt us. Like, say, if you have anything of money, piece of paper, they don't worth anything. You have to believe in the institution of money to get money to be worth anything. And as long as we do, it works.
If you as an individual do not believe in it, you're going to go under. So you have to approach it. And there are a lot more things like that. Ian Baker, I can quote for you here, a British philosopher, he said, although social reality exists independent of the volition of any particular individual, it can exist only so far as individual human minds are committed to recognizing it and acting as the media through which are processed the cultural ideas and meanings and the rules of expectations that rise from and result from its existence. You can just think of that. If you're, it doesn't matter if you're in India or in Sweden or in the United States. If you don't follow sort of value system, normal practices, you're going to get into trouble. You get into trouble by your neighbors, you get into trouble by the society, and you finally might end up in jail or a mental hospital. Even though all these things are social conventions that has been constituted throughout history in your culture. For example, rules about sexuality and so on. If you don't accept those, you might run into extremely trouble. So, in that sense, they are real. Social facts, as we can say, they are real, because if you try to avoid them, they hit you like a ton of bricks, even though they don't exist in the real world. And the world is full of that. Language is another thing. Language is socially constructed. It's been developed in a particular place with a particular history. But if you don't accept it as real, you're going to be outcast. If you refuse to learn the language in sense, you're not going to be able to live with it. And language is a good example of other things too. It's a good example of what Aristotle called hexes. We heard that term earlier. And Aristotle talked about that the human world consists of three things. Nature, things that are there independently of us. So that can be how, for humans, how our brain is working. It's culture, how things you can reflect over and do or do not follow. And then hexes is in between there. And his example is language. Imagine this. There is nobody is born with a natural language in their head. I mean, nobody is born Hindi speaking, or English speaking, or Swedish speaking. It's a thing that we learn. But once we learn it, we cannot stop using it. So if I speak to you, or somebody speaks to you in the language that you're fluent in, you cannot just listen to the sound waves, to the words like you could if you're in a language you don't know. And try to not hear the meaning, and you fail. And most of the things, a lot of the things in our path of interpretation are of that nature. Once they learn, we can't undo it without very, very hard work. And that's exactly what Husserl and Gothenburg discovered. It's very, very hard work to undo all these things we've been learning over history of our lives, because they're sort of ingrained like a second nature in ourselves. So to have a theory of pattern interpretation is not so much to have knowledge, because most of it you're not even aware of. It's just there. It's more like practical knowledge, or phrones as Aristotle would call it. And to acquire these, we do it through socialization. When we're born, we kind of, not really anything, but we're pre-empted. And then everybody is put into, you might say, 4 levels of socialization, or 4 levels of one is the micro level, that's your family. And one part of the micro level also is your neurological structures. There are things that make people different, like ADHD, like you can have some cognitive problems or neurological problem that makes you either experience too much or too little in various fields. But it's also what your family gives you. It's also in terms of your inner psychological makeup. It's a meso level, your village and so your local environment, and they give you a lot of input. And it's a macro level, which is the state of the world, if you want to have. You get inputs from all of those things, and increasingly so, which is both good and bad. You might say that a sociologist, Peter Berger, he says that modernization is the road from fate to choice. Fate to choice. And take an example. He said, if I had gone down to a village in India or maybe in Africa in the 1700s, and I could see there was a boy and a girl being born, if I just got all the information about their parents, caste, class, what they do, everything, I could predict 90% of the lives they would lead. The guys, the boy would take the same job as his father, and etc., etc. Modernization brings in newspapers, radio, TV, movies, and people get so much more, and they can choose. And first they can see what they can choose between. If they get a better education, they get a social capital. This makes them able to do those choices also to a much higher extent. That's a good thing. The bad thing is that the other side of the coin is in terms of how you feel about it, anxiety. Like, as long as your life is predicted by social forces, you can say it's fate or God, whatever. And I'm not responsible. I live the life I live because it's the only life I can live. But if you get in the modern world, you have choices. And you can apply the choices. So whatever you end up in is your fault. You can think, oh, I ended up here because I did not go to school, I did not study hard enough, I married the wrong woman, the wrong man, and you did all these things, and that gives you anxiety. And that you can see very clearly, like in Europe and in the United States today. 50 years ago, 90% of all people who went to the doctor went there for a physical or a somatic problem. Today, over 60% of people who go to the healthcare go there for a mental problem, for anxiety, or for psychological problems. That's the backside of modernity. The backside of the road from faith to choice. That's a different one. And that's also one of the reasons why I must say that a lot of what the Indian has to sell has been very much more popular in Europe for the last 25, 30 years. There's been an explosion in things like yoga and meditation in the West. Let's see if I should take in. I think time flies. We should do something very quickly about the yoga too. This is a tough nut to crack, really. And I haven't been working with that explicitly for quite a while. But anybody interested can get a copy of my paper from Professor sitting here. Just tell him or give me your email and I will actually send it to you. The first thing is that Western philosophers, if you read Westerners, they have a lot of times thought that Indian philosophy is just mysticism and weird stuff. It's not rational. But later on, we have started to see that that's not the case. And when I wrote this paper, that was really a letdown, I would say. What I tried to do, I tried to compare Husserl